Don't react. Just wait until your mom leaves. Jake's voice was low, steady, but something in it cracked me open. We were standing in my parents' attic in Burlington, Vermont. Easter Sunday, dust in the air, fake snow in a tub marked holiday decor. My mom was humming some Sinatra tune downstairs, like this was just another Sunday chore. But Jake wasn't moving. He stood beside a wall of insulation, frozen. His eyes met mine, pale and unreadable. And that sentence, "Don't react," lodged itself somewhere between my lungs. I hadn't seen what he'd found yet. I didn't need to. I already knew. Something buried here didn't want to stay buried. Something they never thought I'd find. And for a moment, time felt quieter than it should. Like the whole attic was holding its breath with me. If you'd walked into that attic without context, you wouldn't have noticed anything unusual. There were plastic bins stacked in uneven towers, each labeled in my mom's tight handwriting. Canas, candles, fall, leaf garland, winter, flannel throws. A few of them were buckled, bulging at the sides like they'd been resealed too many times. A stack of half-crushed gift bags leaned against a folding chair no one had used since 2004. It smelled like cinnamon-scented regret and old insulation. Jake and I had come for Easter weekend. It was his idea to help clear the attic. My dad, Greg, had mentioned it at brunch like he always does. Half a joke, half a guilt trip. "One of these days someone's gonna break their neck up there," he said, poking at his scrambled eggs. And just like always, I'd said, "Sure." And just like always, Jake had said, "I'll help." That's his thing. Showing up, quietly, unasked. My mom, Linda, was downstairs humming along to a speaker she'd placed near the stairs. Frank Sinatra now. Earlier, it was Bublé. She always kept music on during chores, like it made the silence less dangerous. She had this strange gift for moving through denial like it was furniture. Navigating it so gracefully, you barely noticed the bruises. Jake was on the far side of the attic, reorganizing things no one had touched in decades. I was knee-deep in a box full of tangled extension cords and cracked tree ornaments when I noticed he'd stopped moving. Completely. That alone was alarming. Jake doesn't freeze. He pauses strategically, thoughtfully, but this was different. I looked up. He was crouched near the wall, one hand braced on an old rocking horse, the other hanging at his side. He wasn't blinking. "Jake?" I said. His head turned slowly. His face had gone pale. And when he finally walked across the attic toward me, his movements were careful, like he was afraid to wake something up. Then, in a voice low enough to fall through the floorboards, he whispered, "Don't react. Wait until your mom leaves." And that's when it started. The quiet unraveling. The heartbeat that stopped feeling like mine. The attic didn't look different. But something inside it had shifted, or maybe something inside me had. I didn't know it yet, but the floor beneath my life had just started to tilt. I used to think all little sisters felt like background characters. Like we were cast to react, not to matter. To stand beside the plot, not in it. Ashley was born 4 years before me, and somehow 4 decades ahead of me. She didn't walk, she glided. She didn't study, she strategized. And the older we got, the more she sparkled in my parents' eyes, like she'd been carved from ambition and light. She made honor roll before I learned long division. She was driven. I was sweet. She was a born leader. I was a good sport. I don't remember my parents ever saying I was less. It wasn't like that, it was subtler. They praised her out loud and praised me, in comparison. Ashley's incredible with numbers. Emma's our creative one. Ashley's already got a 5-year plan. Emma's so thoughtful. It was always a contrast. Always conditional. Once, when Ashley won some statewide entrepreneurship competition in high school, they framed her certificate and hung it above the fireplace. I remember standing next to her in the photo, smiling like a backup singer. I got a ribbon once for a poem I wrote in 3rd grade. It said, "Honorable mention." Mom stuck it on the fridge beside the grocery list and a coupon for air filters. I'm not bitter. At least I wasn't then. I just adapted. You learn to take up less space when no one notices you're in the room. Ashley was the kind of person people described in headlines. Local teen secures full scholarship to Ivy League prep program. Young entrepreneur launches wellness brand before 25. The business had clean fonts, neutral tones, and inspirational quotes that looked great in cursive over filtered sunrise photos. Breathe, align, rise, that sort of thing. Mom didn't just support her. She followed her. She reposted the quotes on Facebook. She read Ashley's blog aloud at the dinner table. She called her visionary. She didn't ask me much about my life. Sometimes she got my job title right, sometimes she didn't. Ashley would occasionally throw me a compliment, like a bone. "Oh my God, you're still in that little apartment, right? That's so cute." Like I was a rescue pet who'd learned to roll over. Dad mostly stayed quiet, nodded a lot, pretended not to notice the imbalance because that's what he always did. It wasn't overt cruelty, but it was constant. A slow drip of, "She matters more." And I got good at nodding. There was one person who never made me feel invisible. Her name was Margaret. I was told she was my great-aunt, but she never felt distant like that. She didn't hover on the edge of the family tree, she was rooted somewhere much closer. Somewhere mine. Her house sat on a hill just outside Burlington, tucked between tall pine trees and half-forgotten garden beds. It smelled like lemon soap and wood smoke, and there were always fresh scones cooling on the counter, even when no one was coming. She listened more than she talked, which made her the rarest person in my life. She remembered things, tiny things, like the name of the book I was reading, or the exact way I took my tea, or that I hated my middle name. When she looked at me, it wasn't with obligation. It wasn't filtered through what Ashley had done. It was just me. And for a long time, that was the only place I ever felt real. She had this glass cabinet filled with delicate china teacups, all mismatched, none of them used. They looked like they'd been waiting for someone special, someone who never came. There were photo frames too, but most of them were empty. I once asked why. She smiled and said, "Some stories don't have pictures yet." Margaret gave me birthday cards with $20 bills folded inside, even when I was too old for it. She'd say, "Don't tell the others," with a wink. She gave me a bracelet, once a silver one, with little leaves etched along the band. It didn't match anything I wore, but I never took it off. I remember being 7, walking with her through her garden as the late summer sun dipped behind the treetops. She paused, looked around, and said, "Maybe this place will be yours one day." I didn't know what she meant. I just liked how it sounded. She died when I was 9. I don't remember her being sick. I just remember one day she was there and then she wasn't. At the funeral, my mom told me Margaret had left behind a lot of debt, that her house would be sold, that there was nothing left to inherit. She lived big, Mom said with a shrug, but she owed bigger. I remember that sentence clearly. They said it more than once, like a chorus they'd rehearsed. I remember not saying anything. I remember clutching the bracelet in my pocket. And for years after, I remembered Margaret the way you remember the first place you felt safe. Not perfect. Just real. Jake didn't move after he said it. "Don't react. Wait until your mom leaves." His voice wasn't panicked. It was precise, measured, like he didn't want to risk saying anything else. I followed the cue. I stood up like I was dreaming, crossed the attic, and leaned over the stairwell. "Hey, Mom," I called down, trying to sound casual. "Can you check if we still have the vacuum with the hose attachment? Might be easier than this broom." She answered with a cheerful hum and vanished down the stairs like nothing had happened. Like this wasn't the beginning of something irreversible. The moment her footsteps faded, Jake pointed. There was a narrow space behind a rolled-up rug, and a line of storage bins almost invisible if you weren't looking for it. A panel of insulation that didn't quite sit right. A seam in the wall someone had tried to make disappear. He didn't touch it, he just stepped aside, watching me. I reached forward, my hands colder than they should have been. I pushed the boxes gently, moved the carpet. There, tucked sideways in the space, was a plain cardboard box, nothing labeled, nothing dramatic. The tape had come loose on one side, like it had been opened recently and sealed again in a hurry. I pulled it out. Inside was a cream-colored folder. Heavy, too heavy for a few sheets of paper. Its edges were slightly bent, but it had clearly been handled with care. And right there, printed neatly in the center, Emma Hartley. My full name. Not a nickname, not initials. The sight of it made my stomach flip. Jake didn't speak. He didn't need to. He'd seen it already, just enough to know what it meant, but not enough to steal it from me. I opened the folder, slowly, like it might bite. The first thing I noticed was the date. 19 years ago. I wasn't ready. I turned the page anyway. The formatting was clean, legal. One of those documents with embossed seals and bolded headers. A trust. Created by Margaret Hartley. Her name looked like a ghost on the page. Familiar, unshakable. The document was clear. The trust was in my name. Margaret had named Linda and Greg my parents, or so I thought, as guardians and financial trustees. They were legally obligated to disclose the existence of the trust and its assets when I turned 18. They never did. My hands were sweating. My pulse had dropped into my throat. There was something else. A letter, tucked between the pages. Handwritten, folded carefully. My name on the front. I hesitated, then unfolded it. My darling Emma, if you're reading this, it means I'm gone. And the people raising you have decided the time is right to tell you the truth. I pray they did. You deserve to know who you are. I stopped. There was a ringing in my ears. The words blurred for a moment. I sat down on the attic floor like my body had given up. My grandmother, not great-aunt, grandmother had left me a life, and my parents had taken it. Everything I thought I knew about myself was suddenly up for renegotiation. The truth wasn't in a headline. It wasn't shouted. It was here. Quiet, heavy, unavoidable. And I wasn't the person I thought I was anymore. I didn't tell them right away. For a full day, I carried the folder like a secret weapon tucked inside my coat. Every time I sat down, I felt it press against my ribs, a quiet reminder that the ground beneath my life had cracked, and now I was the only one who knew. Jake didn't ask questions. He just made tea, sat across from me, and waited. Like he knew I'd speak when I was ready. I didn't. Not to him. Not yet. Instead, I called a lawyer. I showed him the folder, the trust, the signatures, the letter. He didn't look surprised. First thing we'll do, he said, is file a formal demand for accounting. They're legally required to show how the funds were handled. He said it like it was a routine matter, but nothing about this felt routine to me. The letter went out that same week. Neatly typed, perfectly polite, a blade sheathed in courtesy. They didn't call me until the second day. 10:14 a.m. Linda. Incoming call. I let it ring once before answering. Her voice hit me like a slap. Are you serious? Not hello. Not what's going on? Just pure, immediate offense. You're suing us? She hissed. After everything we've done for you? I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. You ungrateful little girl, she snapped. You wouldn't exist if it weren't for us. That was the moment I almost laughed. Not because it was funny. Because it was familiar. The tone. The volume. The righteousness that wrapped every insult in the language of sacrifice. Mom, I said flatly. Don't call me that right now. There was silence. Then the background noise shifted. Footsteps. The echo of hardwood floors. I pictured her pacing in the kitchen, apron still on, fury tucked under one arm like a serving tray. We took you in, she continued. We raised you, fed you. Do you know how much it costs to raise a child? And how much did Margaret leave you to help with that? I asked quietly. There was a pause. Just long enough to know I'd hit something. Then another voice cut in. Greg. Tell her we'll fight it. We're not letting her destroy everything. Of course they were on speaker. Of course they were united. "You're not a victim, Emma," Linda said. "We did what we had to do. It wasn't that much money." "I'll see how much when the accounting comes in," I replied. She scoffed. "Oh, please. You think getting a few dollars will fix you? You think it makes up for being a miserable little..." I hung up. Jake looked at me from across the kitchen. He didn't ask what she said. He didn't have to. Later that night, I caught myself thinking mom and dad again, out of habit. The words slipped through my mind like old clothes still hanging in a closet I didn't live in anymore. But I stopped myself. Linda. Greg. That's who they were now. Not family. Just people with a story to protect. 2 days later, they showed up. No warning, just a knock on the door, sharp, familiar. When I opened it, they were both standing there, smiling. Linda held a Tupperware container. Cookies. Probably oatmeal, the kind she made when I was sick as a kid, or when she wanted to say, "I'm sorry," without saying it out loud. "We thought we'd talk face to face," she said, "like a family." Jake stayed in the next room. He trusts me to hold my own. I let them in. I wanted to see how they looked when they lied in person. Linda went straight to the couch and launched into her performance. Misunderstanding, overreaction, miscommunication. She stacked the words like she was building a defense out of soft pillows. Greg just stood behind her, arms crossed, waiting for the moment he could say, "I told you so." "You're blowing this out of proportion," she said. "It wasn't some crime. We made choices, as parents." "You made choices about me," I said, "but never with me." She blinked, rolled her eyes. "You've always been sensitive, always needed everything spelled out." "And where did the money go?" I asked. Silence. "The trust. Where did it go?" Linda looked at Greg, then back at me. "What are you implying? Did it go to Ashley?" Her jaw clenched. "You think we're going to justify every choice we made for you?" "No," I said. "I think you're going to tell me the truth." Greg stepped forward. "It went to someone who deserved it." That was it. That was the moment I stopped hoping for an apology. I opened the door. They didn't move. "You're not our daughter anymore," Linda said. "I hope you're happy." She set the cookies down on the table. Like that would soften the landing. And then they left. I didn't touch the cookies. I just stood there, shaking, until Jake came in and wrapped his arms around me. I didn't go to every hearing. Just the one that mattered. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. No towering ceilings, no dramatic lighting. Just wood paneling, a humming air vent, and a judge with silver hair and no time for theatrics. Jake sat beside me. Calm, present, a silent anchor. My lawyer stood, clear, practiced. She moved through the facts like someone flipping pages in a story she already knew the ending to. "This is the trust, established 19 years ago by Margaret Hartley," she said, holding it up. "It names Emma Hartley as the sole beneficiary. It names Linda and Gregory Hartley as trustees. The terms are unambiguous. Disclosure and transfer of assets were required by Emma's 18th birthday. That deadline passed 12 years ago." The judge didn't blink. We submitted the bank statements, the transfers, the labeled scholarship funds that had quietly funded Ashley's private school tuition, the marketing budgets that launched her wellness business. Everything was documented. Paper trails don't lie. Ashley's attorney tried the sympathy card. "She didn't know," they claimed. "She was just a child when the trust was misused. She had no control over how the money was directed." But the emails told a different story. Archived threads from 10 years ago. Ashley thanking Linda for the support during her business launch. Talking about the trust, in quotation marks. She knew. She'd known for years. And still, she had gone on camera, on podcasts, in interviews, saying, "No one gave me anything. I built this from scratch. You have to earn what you want. That's the only way it's real." Those clips were played aloud in court, her voice echoing off the walls like a confession in slow motion. I didn't look at her. I didn't need to. I imagined her staring at the floor, wondering if the spotlight she'd built was finally too hot to stand under. The ruling came at the end of that same session. The judge didn't hesitate. The business is to be liquidated. The proceeds transferred to Miss Hartley. Linda and Gregory Hartley are to be held responsible for remaining funds. A full accounting is ordered, penalties pending based on audit outcomes. There was no gasp in the courtroom, no weeping, just silence. Linda sat stiffly, her hands folded in her lap like she was posing for a portrait she didn't want to be in. Greg stared straight ahead, like he was watching the ending of a movie he refused to believe he starred in. When it was over, I didn't speak to them. I didn't look back. 2 weeks later, the transfer arrived. It wasn't everything, but it was enough. Enough to start over. Enough to breathe without wondering what else had been stolen. Ashley shut down the company. Quietly. No public statements. No rebranding. Just a short paragraph buried at the bottom of a local paper's business section. Due to a personal decision, founder Ashley Hartley has closed operations of her wellness brand indefinitely. They sold their house soon after. Not publicly, but I found out anyway. You always do in towns like Burlington. Word travels when pillars of the community quietly step down from the altar. Ashley moved back in with them. She was recalibrating, according to someone who knew someone who had coffee with her once. The same words she used to sell. 300 online courses to women going through breakups. Recalibrate, realign, reclaim. Now, it was her turn. And I felt nothing. No revenge, no triumph. Just quiet. We moved. Nothing dramatic, just a smaller house. Bigger windows, fewer ghosts. Jake cooks more now. I laugh more. Sometimes at nothing. Sometimes just because I can. The money's all mine. The trust, the leftover business assets, even the emergency fund they once offered to make me disappear $150,000, wired, in good faith, if I agreed to let it go. I didn't. Not because I needed revenge, but because I needed truth. And truth doesn't get negotiated. Sometimes I reread Margaret's letter. It's creased now, the corners soft from handling. I don't read it looking for answers. I read it because it's the only thing in this whole story that was meant for me. She wrote with love. With certainty. She knew exactly who I was before anyone tried to rewrite it. I haven't told anyone what I'll do next. There's no business plan, no reinvention, no curated comeback. For the first time in my life, I don't want to build anything. I just want to stand still and know that the ground beneath me is mine. Linda and Greg haven't reached out since the judgment. Ashley hasn't either. I'm fine with that. Silence doesn't scare me anymore. Because now, for the first time, it's peaceful.